very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
Hey, you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Today's episode is all about Xi'an, which is a city in northwest China, I guess is the best way to describe it, despite there being still a lot of China on the west of it. Developed China, kind of like a northwest corner. It's the birthplace of unified China, we should say, which kind of has to do a little bit about what we're talking about today. We went here on vacation a few weeks ago as one of our many different China trips, and this time around the focus of Xi'an was really to see the Terracotta Warriors, to see the old city fortifications of Xi'an, Drum Tower, Bell Tower, Goose Pagoda, and of course we could not go to a Chinese city without visiting some of their local theme parks. So we also visited Lewa Adventure, which is home to Flash, the big MACK hypercoaster. And we went to a newer park, Silk Road Paradise, which has a really unique flying coaster that's kind of like a B&M flying coaster knockoff from Golden Horse / Jinma rides. Anyway, so today's episode is all in that theme of Xi'an, and we'll talk mostly about the theme parks, but of course a little bit about culture in this particular one as well.
Mm-hmm. So, when we got to Xi'an, the first thing that we did was we went to the city wall.
Well, first we just go to the hotel.
Well, yeah, but
which is a spectacular hotel.
The hotel
by the way.
is amazing.
We stayed at the JW Marriott Xi'an, which was located in the north part of Xi'an, kind of between the airport and the city. And it was a perfect location because it had metro stop. But also it was on the side of the city. It had the Terracotta Warriors, which are kind of in the middle of nowhere because, they only stumbled upon it a few years ago. It was a great hotel, one of the best hotels I've ever stayed at. So if you are ever in the Xi'an region, which I don't know why you would, but if you are in that region...
There's reasons to go to Xi'an.
Yeah, there are reasons to go.
I don't know why you would.
There's as many places I expect their listeners to go to first. But stay at the JW Marriott, that's located in Northside City. It's just called JW Marriott Xi'an Hotel, I think. And we got a nice room upgrade, and then our concierge team in the lounge, they got us set up with a tour guide / chauffeur for our Terracotta Warrior part of the trip. But yes, so then once we dropped off our stuff, got changed, and hit the town after a good luck and coffee, we went to the city wall,
which was really nice. It's a very nicely maintained fortification. I believe it has some record, some designation as like the most complete intact city wall fortification in China, something to that nature. It's like a perfect rectangle.
Well, it is the oldest, largest, and best preserved Chinese city wall.
Right.
From the Hongwu Emperor.
Yeah. It's a really great complex and extremely, painstakingly preserved. And then after we did the city wall, we went to Din Tai Fung, which was a regular occurrence on these China trip nights. We went to the Bell Tower and the Drum Tower, which are...
So, the fortification around Xi'an is almost square, and so that old Xi'an was in there. And this is definitely a different era of China than you're used to when you go to, Beijing stuff. So the color of it was very much... I kind of related more, to the modern Mulan, the new Mulan movie. It's kind of set in that era, and so it's... lots of brown and black and dark colors and then red. It's not as flashy with the green
and blue,
blue, gold and red that you see and the more the later what do you call it, dynasties and the later architecture. It's very much old Chinese architecture, which I enjoyed so much because we've done so much stuff in China, especially around Beijing and Nanjing, that was really from the later dynasties. That it was kind of really cool to see all the original stuff, like unification time. And of course, also the Xi'an City Wall. So anyway, that it's a giant square around the city, the fortification. And then within the middle of the city, there's two towers. There is the Bell Tower and the Drum Tower. And like the names imply, one tower was meant for them to ring bell at, and the other one was literally where they would drum at. And based on the time of day, they would either drum the hour of the day or they would bell the hour of the day, and that's the way you knew whether it was a morning or night. And then the drum tower was also used to announce times of the year, like the kind of month of the year, or the solstice, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different drums, and I don't even know how you would remember that when you lived there, but I guess you knew. The particular drum they were playing was the drum for whatever season, I guess.
It was neat walking around the drum tower and seeing each drum, and everyone There's like several dozen drums on the edges, on the perimeter of the drum tower, and each one was labeled for like various things, like first day of spring and like moon festivals and stuff. I mean, there was all sorts of annual designations where that drum would be used just on that particular holiday. Very cool setup. The bell tower is in the center of a giant automobile roundabout, like very Paris, very
Arc de Triomphe, yeah.
But it also makes it kind of less, like it's amazing in its own way, but it's also in my way, like it also feels kind of less amazing because it's like surrounded by automobile infrastructure.
I know, it's so
from like this century or last century. That.
But it really was the heart of the city, wasn't it, in the past?
Yeah. So like on the one hand, what's nice is that there is two of them, because I love that they're very similar. I mean, they're different looking buildings, but they complement each other really nicely. They're very close to each other. And while the bell tower is the one that is like has the traffic circle going around it, the drum tower is situated a bit more traditionally with like other buildings and like a promenade and stuff around it.
Yeah, still promenades, yeah.
The two of them together, I think, balance each other out really nicely. And accessing the bell tower is still very easy with the metro stations, the underground tunnels connecting. So there's no like pedestrian traffic around the bell tower, which is nice, like around like cars and stuff. So you just go underneath it. It was a very cool complex. We went at night and it was very pretty, very well lit up. Lots of people in traditional garb taking pictures.
Photos, yeah.
Lots of people set up doing that. And some nice shopping. There was like food and things and little stores. It was a nice spot. I really liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Xi'an is a very modern city, but also just like the way people interact with each other, it seemed very organized, very mellow, very courteous. It's
a very practical city.
Not every Chinese... It's funny because, like, you know, maybe you go to China and you're like, oh, like it all kind of feels the same. But we've been going to China so much that now I really feel like I can distinctly feel a complete different vibe in every city.
Yeah.
And I really liked the vibe in Xi'an. Like, it was distinctly different from... Despite being quite close to Chengdu and Chongqing. And like, you can take a train, it takes a couple hours. You're in Chengdu, and in a couple more hours you're in Chongqing. Like, it's not very far from those two Western Chinese cities, but all three of these cities feel distinctly very different. We've all done them this year on different trips, but it was very enjoyable, Xi'an. I really, really enjoyed it. And just like the scape of the city, it was very practical. It didn't seem to have as much of the ghost city vibes as some of these Chinese cities have. Would you agree with that? It seemed all very lively.
Yeah.
And the metro system, which is kind of new, was very nice. Like, it's one of maybe the most high-tech metro system ever done. Like, it's very clean. It's not as busy as some of the other systems, which was nice. But also, if you're at a station of the newer lines, which most lines are brand new, it shows you every car and how busy it is in the car. So it knows upcoming trains, cars. It knows how busy it is in each car. So you can kind of prepare to where to enter the cars. And then it shows you which cars are which temperature, so you can see, like, okay, you want a cooler car or a warmer car, you can pick which car you want.
It's like crazy.
It times it exactly when you come in. Like, it's highly advanced, and it was very enjoyable. The only downside of the metro system was that we really struggled getting a metro card, and we prefer getting metro cards. And at every other metro system in China that we've done, we've been able to get it at a counter, but here it was strictly at the local office of the metro operator, or through a machine that only took Chinese bank accounts, which we didn't have. But we figured it out after a staff member helped us, and we WeChatted her and paid her cash or something. It was a thing. It took a while, but they were very nice, and they helped us. And the typical, we've always had such good experiences of people helping us in China. Like, they're always willing to help once you kind of manage to explain your situation a little bit. So overall, that was a good day. And then the next day, we started our morning with buffet, which is great because it was a good buffet with beautiful view of Xi'an.
Really wonderful.
And then we had our private chauffeur / car hire guy drive us to the Terracotta Warriors. And this complex, the Emperor Qin's giant underground palace complex that also has 400 pits of warriors and all that kind of stuff. The famous Terracotta Warriors, they are nowhere near anything, to be honest with you. You have to drive through the farmlands, and then you're at some outskirt metro station, and then you take a dirt road for a little bit, and then you take another road, and not convenient to get there. But once you get there, it's like a little town, and then there we got dropped off, and we got linked up with our actual tour guide at the complex, who gave us these little headphones, and it was just the three of us, Alex and I and the tour guide, and we did our several-hour journey through the complex of the Terracotta Warriors.
It was just so brilliant going to a live archaeological dig to see these monuments, these artifacts. These warriors are over 2,200 years old, but knowledge of them was lost. There was no record of them existing.
They were a secret, yeah.
So
on purpose.
They were buried deliberately for so long, and they were found by pomegranate farmers who were digging a well, and this was in the 70s. So, in less than 50 years, it went from this thing that we had no knowledge of it existing in modern history before the 1970s, and now it's become like the number 2 tourist destination in China because of the incredible historical nature of it. And
the complex is quite impressive. It almost kind of gives
cool.
like Jurassic Park vibes with like
totally
with the big exhibits and the archaeological digs and the the artifacts everywhere, and them actively, like super actively every single day. There's like 200 archaeologists before the opening of the complex that spend all night digging up very slowly these new warriors they find every day. And there's whole sets of warriors that they're not uncovering because it's the moment that they get in touch with oxygen. The paint that's on there is 2,200 years old paint. They were all painted structure or painted statues. The moment that it comes in air or oxidizes, it's like 5 minutes until it's completely gone. So they are trying to find technology to preserve that. It's a couple they were able to preserve right away, which are on display in a visitor center. In fact, we were there a few days after, if not like, we were literally like 2 or 3 days after they showed a completely painted original that they were able to preserve right out of the dig site, and it was put on display, and we happened to be there like the day after or something. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
It was pretty monumental that the unveiling of those 2 warriors recently. I mean, it was a whole event. They had like banners and stuff to commemorate the date in which the newest warriors were pieced together and organized and preserved and displayed. So it was just a really cool experience. Definitely up there with the Great Wall of China and things throughout Beijing, for example.
Well, yeah, because just 2 days prior to that, we were actually at the Forbidden City, which we have been trying to go to for a while now, but you have to get tickets, and exactly 7 days before, when they open up, they sell out within minutes. So we got lucky. We finally, on this trip, we also went to Beijing in the beginning, and we did get lucky. We went into the Forbidden City. And the reason I mentioned Forbidden City is because Forbidden City is massive. It's like the biggest palace complex ever created, and it's like unfathomably large. And you walk around for hours, and there's just 999 rooms in the palace. Like because 10,000 rooms would be, or is it 9,999 rooms?
It's 9,000.
Yeah, 9,999 rooms, and that's because 10,000 rooms would be from the gods, and so the emperor was one room below that. But anyway. Then you learn all about the Emperor Qin's underground palace system he created. Well, he created an above-ground system and an underground system because, feng shui, yin and yang. It's exactly between the mountain and the river. It's exactly between this plane and that plane. Like, everything was very well balanced by cultural significance. And so you learn about how massive this complex is and how we're several miles from where the actual emperor's tomb is. Because this is all related to the tomb of the emperor. He built himself an entire underground palace. He spent 35 years building this with 750,000, like 750,000 people working on it every single day for 35 years. I mean, it's unfathomable, the sheer amount of effort that was put into building this. There's 400 pits of warriors, of acrobats, of whatever statues that were believed to have come alive if they needed to protect the emperor or to entertain the emperor in the afterlife.
They served this dual purpose of he needs these guys for the afterlife, but they'll also come in handy if for some reason the gods decide to bring them to life. Like if China's under attack
Yeah, or because
they could,
this was the emperor that unified China. So there were 7 or 6 different kingdoms in China, and he was the one that unified all of them. But all the other ones were all in the east. So I'm talking like where modern day Beijing is, modern day Shanghai, modern day Xiamen, like all those regions, had their own kingdoms, and he unified all of them, but they were in the west. So all of these warriors were all facing east, because if they ever were to rise up against Emperor Qin, the first actual emperor of unified China, because he forcefully unified all of them, if they were ever to rise up, he had his armies, it's like 400 pits of people, and things ready to like help protect him, which is why they were all facing to the east. Am I reciting that correctly?
Yeah.
And so that was very, very fascinating. But the scope of that was what really, really shocked me. We went through 3 of the pits that are currently uncovered, and then they now know there's 400 pits. Not all pits are equally as big, but they're all impressive because they all resemble a part of the palace system, or like outside of the palace system. And just to think that the underground palace that they've created with mercury rivers, which is why they can't go into it, but they can see from space using sort of like radar technology. They can see where the mercury rivers run underneath the ground of the complex. And they have mapped out the entire complex. And there is a particular room in the exhibit where they show where we are, where the little pit is, which is a giant pit of like, what is it? How many warriors are in there? Like, was it like 6,000 warriors, 20,000 warriors, a crazy amount of warriors in like that main pit that everyone's seen pictures of, And then imagine that little pit is like miles and miles away from the center of the palace system, and the whole complex is much, much larger than a Forbidden City will ever, has ever been. It's wild to imagine how much effort was put into that, and how entire lives were dedicated to creating this for Emperor Qin. I mean, again, 750,000 people working on that every day for 35 years. I mean, it's absolutely crazy when you're there. Just like putting it all together and learning all the information and seeing all of it unfold and knowing it's over 2,000 years old. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done. It kind of up there with like Summer Palace, Great Wall, all the Chinese things was so impressive to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was wonderful. And this was something we hadn't even thought of going to Xi'an until in April on our first Beijing trip of the summer of the year. We were talking to this couple that live in Xi'an while we were taking the cable car up to the Great Wall of China, and we were like, oh yeah, that's somewhere we need to go. Like, that needs to be next on our list. Since we were finally taking down all of the major Beijing spots, we were like, well, where do we go next? We go to Xi'an. And then our Asia trip, the itinerary changed a lot to accommodate just different things, different priorities shifting around, and Xi'an ended up being like a key focus of this trip, even though it was only like a few months earlier we decided like, oh, we need to go here.
I think the biggest thing was because we wanted to go to Beijing in April. It was the first time since the pandemic, and we were like, oh, Universal, and then we'll do a couple of historical things, and then suddenly we realized that stuff like the Great Wall, Forbidden City, the Summer Palace, they're so massively impressive. They're so beyond anything else in the world when it comes to scope and size. It makes all these European castles and palaces I've been raised with, make them all seem kind of meh. And then we realized, oh wow, yeah, we have to go see more now. Like I kind of had the feeling like once we were on this China cultural train, we were hooked. Yeah. And then we went to Xi'an and we saw like this, cave Buddha temple system of like 10,000 Buddhas, and
Very
it's like,
true. Yeah.
I mean, we've never seen stuff like that before. That's also in our top 5 coolest things
Xi'an
ever
was
done.
just a natural consequence.
It was only normal that was next.
We ramped up our Chinese archaeological adventures like to the point where like we just had to go. Like by the time we were done with our West China trip in May, we were like, oh, like Xi'an is like obviously needs to be our next mainland China priority. And we were like, well, we can go, maybe we'll go next year. But then we were thinking of doing like Macau and decided not to do that, and like we were gonna do Shanghai.
We were definitely gonna do Hong Kong. We were gonna do Hong Kong, Zhuhai, and Macau because it's all in one region. But then we realized Macau is expensive. Zhuhai, we've done China Ocean Kingdom pretty extensively, and then we kind of shifted things, spent more time in Hong Kong.
We thought about going to do more Japan. We were gonna maybe do Universal in Osaka, but then like with the Donkey Kong coaster being delayed, we were like, there's no. Without the Donkey Kong coaster, there's nothing really there that is so different from either what we can do in Hollywood
or we already did there.
That we already did in 2018. So we were like, so we kind of gathered up time from other activities that we canceled to do a full Xi'an visit where we did all of the Xi'an things, the Terracotta Warriors, and then the theme parks. And I'm really glad we did. It worked out really well. When we so we did the Terracotta Warriors, and then we left. That's like a morning thing. We did it in the morning. By the time we got back.
Yeah,
to the
we went
hotel,
early because it gets really hot there. When
Yeah.
we left the hotel
it's
at
hot
like
and busy,
7:30.
and we were able to beat the crowds. We went back to the hotel and chilled out. And our plan was to do Lewa Adventure the next day, but we were getting antsy.
Well, I do want to, before we jump into the theme parks, mention one more really cool little thing that we did. And that was the Big Goose Pagoda.
Oh, yeah.
Which we actually did
That was
do
the
that
last
on the
thing that we
same
did.
day with the last park. But I just so we can move into theme parks and finish with theme parks.
Yeah.
There's a big pagoda which, due to an earthquake, it used to be a certain amount. Was it like 10 stories?
This
and
is crazy.
A couple stories crumbled off, and then they built one more story on it because the empress wanted a certain height. But it's like it's a really cool classic temple.
Beautiful
beautiful gardens, and it's a beautiful Buddhist temple. And of course, there's like hundreds, if I'm not mistaken, hundreds of gods in Buddhist culture. And so every time I see a Buddhist temple, which I've seen quite a few by now, there were new gods that I learned about, and it was very nice. It's very cultural. It's very pretty. It aligns with the rest of the architecture style of older Chinese cities like Xi'an. It definitely worth it. So if you ever go to Xi'an, I know earlier I said, and I apologize, I know I said that, like, why would you find yourself there? It is totally worth going, 100%. I think it's one of my favorite cities in China.
Yes.
Like, I
Xi'an
cannot
is
wait
worth
to go back, don't get me wrong.
Deliberately going.
It's just not easy to get to. But
Yeah.
if you are going, or you're thinking of going to China, you want to check out some more cities, and you want to do something cultural, I mean, Xi'an is definitely, like, the place to go. So I'm not saying don't go. So if you do go, here's your little list. Ready? Grab a pen. You're going to do the city wall fortifications. You're going to do the drum tower, the bell tower, the giant goose pagoda, or big goose pagoda, whichever way you want to translate it, and, of course, Terracotta Warriors, and the following two theme parks. Hit it off.
So once we finished our day doing the Terracotta Warriors, it was sort of like, okay, well, the weather was nice, and Lewa Adventure was scheduled to be open for several more hours, and we were like, well, why don't we just get a head start? Like, why don't we just go and do that now? And it was like a cheap, relatively easy taxi ride. It's relatively close to where we were staying, at the hotel. And we went, and, like, the park, of course, was very quiet because, like, Chinese parks are always just open and running, but not necessarily, like, busy. Lewa Adventure is a pretty big park. The whole complex opened in 2015. It opened with, like, 6 roller coasters, and then Flash, their 7th coaster, opened a year later in 2016. All the coasters in the park, with the exception of Flash, are, the usual, like, knockoff, like, Golden Horse and BSA knockoff coasters. And they have actually a really varied collection. One of they used to have a Vekoma Boomerang knockoff that was actually pretty short-lived there. According to Roller Coaster Database, it was only there for like a year or two. And then they also had a corkscrew coaster there that they opened with the park. But it just recently, I think just in the last couple of years, they canned it and are replacing it with a dueling Jinma Rides kiddie coaster that I believe is a clone.
It's a clone of the ones who rode at Nanjing Dragon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So the park's doing well. The fact that they've actually moved on to redeveloping existing areas and attractions and adding more kiddie coasters, more capacity. It's a great family park with, like, a nice complement of family-friendly coasters, especially with this dueling kiddie coaster opening. But, of course, so we get to the park. It's a nice-sized park, a big, like, kind of double loop sort of park, and the first thing we did was we went all the way to the back to check out Flash. Flash is a particularly large hypercoaster that is very lengthy. It stretches from, like, one side of the park's perimeter to the other, and just kind of, like, cradles the back of the park. It kind of reminded me of a little bit of, like, Screamin' Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis, where, like, the whole backdrop of the park is this ride that, like, stretches from one edge of your field of vision all the way to the other. And it was running. We were like, okay, it's open. Like, we ran to it. We were like, all right, let's, we'll give it a shot. And I thought it was fabulous. I thought it was just a fabulous roller coaster.
It runs very well, despite like the restraints on the vehicle hadn't been replaced maybe even since opening, so they were kind of loose. So the sensors wouldn't even catch when we were sitting there. We had to move seats a couple times to even dispatch because I kid you not, like usually that these hydraulics are so precise. But these were just like not. There was like big gaps between them. Actually, they were super wobbly.
That hydraulic restraints.
So when we finally actually dispatched, I was like, okay, well, this state of maintenance. But then you know what? It ran very well. Great airtime. I love the vertical loop. It's just massive. Drop is great. But I am of the opinion that the right side versus the left side of the ride make a big difference. I think the right side seat is significantly better than the left side seat.
Was that the side that you got to ride twice?
No, the side I got to ride once. I was bummed because I think it was better.
Interesting.
Yeah, the one where like you swing on the outside of the drop and it just has way more of a pull. Like laterally, that drop is way wilder on that seat.
Okay.
And the other one is kind of hard lined on the drop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fair.
And then when it comes to the overbang, you swing out. Like you're swinging out. And when you have the turnaround, you swing out. And when you enter the inversion, you swing out. That's almost like the whole thing was designed to sit in the right row. Anyway,
I remember liking the left side, but it's ironic because I
wish I had ridden the right side more.
Yeah, it's ironic because I was like, oh, I like the left side better, and we rode that side once. But in any case, we rode it 3 times. We started with a ride on it, and then did we ride it a second time right away, or did we ride
right away?
We got 2 rides on it right away before moving on to the rest of the park.
Because you got the credit. You went through the whole photo thing. I was like, no, let's just ride again because they're going to dispatch. Because you know how they dispatch every 10, 15 minutes? I was like, let's just get it back in line.
This was my 1,200th coaster. So I wanted to take some pictures in front of it to commemorate that. But Sean was like, oh, no, we should probably just get a ride on it. Which you were right. You were right to say that. And we got our second ride on it. And then it ended up being the last ride of the trip of the night too. Because we got a third ride on it right before the park closed for the evening. We were very satisfied with our 2 rides on it, and we were like, everything else was sort of a bonus. With everything being Chinese manufacturers, there was no guarantee that we would be granted entry on any of the other coasters that we attempted, but to our surprise and delight, we were granted entry onto every roller coaster in the park that we attempted. The only one that we didn't try was this teeny tiny kiddie coaster that didn't look like we could even physically fit in the vehicle. We didn't go over there. But from Flash in the back of the park, we continued around the park. We ended up doing 2 full laps around the park. And after we did Flash, continuing clockwise around the park, we went to the
Dinosaur
Spine, which is a knockoff Vekoma SLC. It has a layout that is it's the Kumali.
Yeah, the Kumali layout.
Flamingo Land layout. And it is this a BSA? Or you know what? It's the same company, I think, that did the inflaming.
It's Jinma.
Oh, it is Jinma. Okay. It's the one of the other coasters that we rode.
Yeah.
Is the same company that did Inflaming Beetles at HB World.
Guys, this effing ride. I have never. First of all, we exceeded the height and weight, and we still went because we're like, well, they didn't check it Flash. They didn't really concern themselves. There's regions in China where they really concern themselves with it, like Chongqing. You might as well Chengdu. You might as well not go over too tall because they will they're so strict.
Yeah, Sichuan province, they're
Guangzhou is strict nowadays because of the incidents, but
Xi'an, they didn't care.
But yeah, they were. So we were like, oh, let's just try. And well, our luck had it. We actually were allowed to freaking get on, and we waited for the front row.
And we got the front row too.
Alex was like, "Do you really want to wait for the front?" And I'm like, "Well, if we're gonna die, we're gonna die in the front. It's gonna be this.
If it's gonna,
Guys, there's a freaking harness, like a whole harnessing system,
like a fighter pilot.
Yeah,
seatbelt harness.
With several around your shoulders and around your waist, and you lock it all up.
5-point harness.
And then it's highly uncomfortable.
And then the shoulder harness comes down.
Which barely clicks. Hard as a rock.
Hard as a rock.
It gives knockoff feels all the way around. And then the thing won't lock. It's like...
You can hear the height.
It's trying to lock the vehicle, but it's not working. So the guy comes over 3 times trying to close the freaking restraints, and we're not feeling confident about this whatsoever because we're on the knockoff SLC that feels yank as hell, looks yank as hell.
Like, this is one
even
where
the logo
where,
was missing like 5 out of 7 letters. Like it was terrible.
It's not like a mine train where like, well, if like the lap bar comes up, like, okay, well, stay alive.
No, it's a freaking SLC.
It's an SLC.
We're in the front row. We're going to hang
if the
to our
restraint
death.
fails, like, we're gonna die. So.
And those seatbelts we had figured soon enough they were all for show because they weren't going to save me from falling out to my death.
Yeah.
So like, and I love my roller coasters. I know that they're generally speaking very safe, but riding a Chinese knockoff SLC when you're over the weight and height limit, that's my own fault.
And it's like
it wasn't a
not
great
being
idea.
maintained, and you can hear the mechanisms inside the
tape
vehicle,
in
like,
places that shouldn't be taped.
groaning and
everything about it just did not seem
retaliating.
right. So then we dispatched. I'm like, why the f are we doing this?
We
Like,
were literally
I'm stressed.
the little seat rings, the handlebars on the sides of the seats are holding onto those.
We're holding on to
because we were like,
oh my god, so
just in
scared,
case,
so
like,
scared. Like I
not
could
going out-
possibly hold my
I'm
body
not going
weight.
out without a fight.
Like I could possibly hold my body weight.
I
in
mean,
the
if we
roller
lost the
coaster.
restraint after the last diversion, all we'd have to do is stay in the seat. The best.
Anyway, so we drop right, and so like we're hanging because we're from this train, so we're kind of hanging there. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so nervous. Like I have never been this scared for my life on a roller coaster. It just felt not.
And I also
good.
was just afraid it was going to hurt really bad.
So then we drop, and the bottom of the drop, it was actually quite wild. It was like a giant bang in your head. You're like, oh shit, it's gonna be bad. But the rest of the ride, I will say, tracking wise, it jingled, but it wasn't like crazy painful.
Jingle is a good word for it because it had acoustics. It felt like a
100%.
broken xylophone.
The thing sounded like metal on metal the whole time, but it didn't feel super crazy uncomfortable. However, oh my god, every time I would hang there, like my restraint wasn't even like, not like it was hydraulic anyway, but like, it was flapping back and forth.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I could literally, I had the feeling that restraint was going to open up any second. I still remember thinking every single element, I was like, oh my god, stop the hang time.
Yeah.
It's freaking getting going.
Oh my
I
god,
need
you guys.
some
this
force
thing
in the back of me.
Crawled through
Because
the
it
layout.
crawled, so we're over here hanging in our restraints
It's
in this knockoff invert.
A miracle it had enough gas to
It
get
was
back
so
to
stressful.
the final breaks. It was terrifying.
We got back,
It was
and
truly
the restraints are kind of painful too. So we got back to the station.
And we were sore.
Oh my god, we were sore and we were like mentally drained. I was like, I'm never doing that again. Like,
That was really scary.
I cannot get. The credits are the credits, man. I do not need to do that again. So that was probably my only knockoff SLC I'll ever ride. However, that's not the only knockoff we rode. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But the only knockoff SLC I'll probably ever ride.
Yeah. So at that point, we continued clockwise down. There was a
Mine train
a Jinma knockoff mine train. We've now ridden like 8 or 9
called Crazy Mining
of
Card.
these.
Only appropriate.
And it's funny. What I remember the most actually about this ride was walking up to it, and like the lights were off. There was no one in the station, including like no ride ops, obviously no guests.
Only a guy sitting
And there was a
in front
staff
of
member standing in front of the entrance. I'm like, oh, it's down. But then we walk up, and the staff member like waves at us and then runs into the station, and it was the sole ride operator for the ride, just standing in front of the ride, like waiting for guests to show up. So we were greeted by the ride operator at the entrance, and then he ran up to like unlock the gate and to lock us into the train. And it was a good ride. It was a mine train. It was the Jinma mine trains of the Vekoma layout. Persuasion, the Calamity Mine layout. They're really fun. They're always a good ride. And then the next coaster we rode was a
horse roller coaster.
Horse roller coaster,
Which looks like a MACK Youngstar Pegasus kind of like ride vehicle.
Right.
However, it is a Beijing GUI Amusement Rides Manufacturing Limited Liability Company.
This is
whatever
a smaller
situation.
Beijing-based ride manufacturer, one that I wasn't sure if we had ridden anything of theirs, but then going through their list, I think we've ridden a kiddie coaster or 2 of theirs, but definitely the spinning roller coaster.
I mean, the train was
at HB World was their other major coaster that we've ridden. Ride. That was a fun ride.
But so the trains are very much like the MACK Youngstar trains. They're about as comfortable.
They look almost
However,
identical
the clearance,
to Pegasus at Europa Park.
The clearance needs to be like very, very low. So I also know, like typical, like these restraints, they're like so loose. Even though like you're locked in, like you can still move them around a lot. Like it's not very safe.
In order for us to get dispatched.
Yeah, in order for us to get dispatched, this ride operator was like, well, the envelope keeps unclearing or whatever. So he pushed down on Alex's restraint, right? Like I'm pushing mine down. He pushed down on Alex's restraint, and they walked the train out so that it couldn't e-stop in the station because Alex would like move up like 1 inch and it would already like would e-stop the ride. So they would walk the train out, holding Alex's train down until we're out of the station, so it could no longer
And then
fall.
once the lift hill catches
and
us,
once
we're
on the
like,
lift
okay.
hill, and that could never happen anywhere else. And that ride was absolutely miserable.
It was a
That made the
janky ride.
dinosaur spine seem fun. Like, what the hell? That was so painful. There's a video of us online.
Yeah, I've actually videoed the entire experience.
We'll probably repost it for this episode. If not, just go to our Instagram or our
That's a fun
Facebook.
video.
You'll find there's a photo. I think the photo that's attached to that video is
There's a
me,
picture of
my
your
mouth
face, like,
open, like screaming because I was in agony. That was a wild little ride. That seems so unassuming too.
And it was very
crazy.
innocent looking. Like once we crested the lift, I was like, "Oh, this layout looks kind of boring." And then as we're riding it, I'm like, "Oh, it's actually terrifying because I feel like we're gonna get decapitated or maybe like shear the axle right off of this train." But yeah, another success. Like we had now gotten 4 credits at this park. This is also in the same area that the teeny tiny kiddie coaster is in, and we didn't even walk over there because it was just so tiny. We're like, yeah. And then the last coaster in the park for us was a knockoff Zamperla motorbike coaster with the basic
called Motor Rider,
motorcycle Zamperla layout.
Also, while I think about this ride, the motor coaster, also Dinosaur Spine, everything there was like spray painted, these like sparkly spray painting colors. And they were just spray painting random parts of the ride.
It
like,
looked very roller
all
coaster
the rides
Tycoon
looked
3.
very like. They just started painting some parts of it with some spray paint, and it just looked like glittery. And like, but all the like both Dinosaur Spine and Motor Rider, look at that,
iridescent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did the motorbike, and we sat in the front, and the launch was actually really punchy.
First of all, the ride vehicles were ultra comfortable.
Very comfortable.
I don't know what that was all about, but they were incredibly comfortable to the point where I was like, wow, some people should like steal this because it was very, very comfortable. But yeah, and then the launch was scary.
And it smelled like the launch smelled like
fire,
rubber.
man. Like a fire was
like the
going
friction on the cable, you could just tell.
And it was so quick, and then like you had that crazy smell, almost like sparks were flying, and then it smelled like you just went through this cloud of
the
smoke.
G-forces were awesome because
it was very good.
The launch track is so short, and the ride has to achieve a pretty high miles per hour in a really short window of time. So like the rate of acceleration is great, and you immediately go up into that kind of upward chandelle move, and you're in the front of the train. Like the G-forces are awesome. You feel like you're gonna like slam your face into your 100%. Motorcycle. But yeah, it was like scary.
And it tracked pretty well, but then there was a moment like there's a part of the ride where, especially towards the end, where like you really dive down into the final turn. Almost kind of like a poltergeist moment, right? Like you dive down and you have that really sharp turn in the opposite direction. I thought I was gonna be one with the freaking metal, like several. Yeah. We rode this thing twice, by the way, voluntarily.
I know
it was actually really fun.
It's probably a theme here, but again, this felt like the 4th time that day that we were like risking our lives on this coaster because it just felt like there was just no guarantees about the maintenance on these rides.
Yeah, it was all kind of whack.
It was enough, for them to be running, but not necessarily for like the bolts to be tight and stuff. Like there was just no guarantees. But we survived the motorcycle coaster. We actually rode twice. They let us stay in the station, stay locked, and just sent us through a second time.
Yeah, it was
because we were
so fun,
quite exhilarated by it. And then after that, we went and rode Flash. Got in line right before the park closed, and it was great. We have had a really successful run at the park. There isn't really anything of substance in the park that isn't a roller coaster.
There's a giant shoot-the-shoot called Aquaman.
They have a giant shoot-the-shoot there, and it's called Aquaman Splashdown. And I'm guessing the reason, or at least the English name, is Aquaman Splashdown. And I'm guessing the reason for that is because somebody probably like used a VPN to search Google for like the American translation of what a typical like splash water, spill water type ride is, and someone must have found like the Aquaman Splashdown at Six Flags Over Texas, and like copied and pasted the spelling and said like, okay, this is what Americans call this type of ride. They call it Aquaman Splashdown, so that's just what we're gonna call it for our English version of the name. There was a lot of funny signage and stuff at that park. There was like a few funky little copyright infringement moments. They had like this Midway game that had like a Star Wars reference, like it was referencing Jedi. I took a picture of it. Let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, Jedi eat chicken. And there's an image of a guy with an assault rifle on the sign. Like it kind of looks like Boba Fett. with an assault rifle. I don't know. It was just a quintessential Chinese park experience that we really enjoyed. They have a huge water park next door that looked amazing.
Yeah, it's massive.
And they have a resort hotel. Like it's quite the complex, but not totally dead. They were doing like a nighttime dance show thing at the front of the park.
Yeah, there was more people performing in that than there were people in the park. The park
Yeah.
was dead.
But yeah, it was a really great experience. And coming off of the success, the high of having such a successful run, we decided to go to Silk Road Paradise, which is the other major park in the Xi'an area. There was stuff at the Silk Road Paradise Park that we were pretty sure we weren't going to be able to ride.
So everything at the Silk Road Paradise Park, except for the coast, is not open yet, is a knockoff, or like a Chinese manufactured ride inspired heavily by existing rides in the West. But there's actually a Intamin Zaxpin that is beautifully themed, very nice. Like the supports are cool, the trains look cool, and we could walk all the way up to it. It's supposed to open later this year, or if not early next year. I just want to mention it because it's there.
Yeah,
it's cool. I can't believe someone actually built it.
The next generation of the Zaxpin product line.
Oh, why would buy one? But it looks really cool, though.
It has a beautiful aesthetic.
It's on RCDB, so if anyone wants to look it up, it's Silk Road Paradise in Chengdu.
Yeah, this is a fascinating park that, considering Lewa Adventure was all roller coasters and nothing else for us, this ended up being a park that was full of interesting extracurricular rides. There was only one roller coaster there that was open, and it was also the only roller coaster there that we were confident that we would be able to ride.
Yeah, I rode it several times.
So they had this really great custom Golden Horse Mine Train coaster in the India section of the park.
Silk Road Paradise is obviously, like the name implies, themed to every single thing the Silk Road touched, old Silk Road So it has a Greece area, it has a Roman area, it has a Persian area, it has a Middle Eastern area,
and then India,
Chinese area, Indian area. So that's kind of like the main in Russia. So those are like what they call like Winter Wonderland.
Yeah,
they don't actually call it Russia. They call it like Winter something.
The park is brand new, and the park actually opened after the Russian occupation of Ukraine. So I'm wondering if they decided
But China and Russia are
but then
besties,
they're allies.
Man.
So I don't know.
Besties. I don't know.
For whatever reason, they didn't choose to label the Russian area as Russia.
Yeah, maybe in Chinese it translates to that, or maybe in Chinese it is Russian, but just for the Western audience they made it not Russia, but it's definitely Russia.
Yeah. And the Chinese or the Russian area of the park has a Northern Lights themed flying coaster that it's the only Golden Horse flying coaster ever manufactured, and it looks a bit like a knockoff B&M flyer. It's definitely inspired by Crystal Wings.
Even the color scheme and the rockwork
at Happy Valley, Beijing. But the ride has a very, very low weight ceiling. And there's actually a bathroom scale at the entrance of the ride. The ride allegedly was open. We walked up to it. We never saw it dispatched.
It was kind of hilarious. Wasn't the weight limit like 80 kilograms? Like super low for two big guys our size.
I would have needed to have lost 75 pounds in order to ride that ride.
And it's funny because it said everything in obviously kilograms because the rest of the world uses metric. But then the bathroom scale was in pounds. Of course, Alex shows 200 something, and she's like, "Oh no!" And we're like, "No, we get it." But also, pounds.
So you have to be between 1.45 and 1.9 meters, which Sean is technically also too tall. I'm actually technically
too tall.
And then you have to be between 40 kilograms and 90 kilograms to ride. And according to our friend Candace, this ride also has a lot of additional mechanical operational struggles. So
which made sense because we saw two girls going in front of us, and the ride never dispatched.
Yeah, it was open, and a ride operator in the front was there to weigh us and turn us away. But then we were like, "Oh well, let's get a video of the ride running anyway."
We spent 20 minutes waiting,
and it never dispatched. Yeah. We never saw it run, so we were it was like a double denial. It didn't open, and we were too fat and too tall.
Funny, the restraint system is pretty much like a B&M. Literally, it's almost like carbon copy clone, except for it loads like a Vekoma Flying Dutchman. So it's the exact same kind of seats, You know, like it looks pretty much exact same, except for you load them as like Nighthawk
and
or Firehawk.
You go up the lift hill backwards
Batwing.
and do like most of the ride lends itself to the B&M Superman clones, except for the lift, which is on your back, and then you flip over, a la the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
If you pull up a YouTube POV of it, there's a couple good ones online. It's a neat ride. I don't know if it would have been anything like truly spectacular in the context of other flying coasters, but it would have been a cool credit to have. And if you're short and skinny and lucky, and you're in Xi'an, and you decide to go to Silk Road Paradise, you might get this credit. So, worth checking out. Just a neat looking ride, the focal point of their Russian area. I thought all the themed areas of the park were really cool and well done. But
it was a really beautiful park. It was very nice, but
the India area was really what we focused on, because it had the operating mine train coaster, which we rode, and had a giant 10-minute long river rapids ride. Like,
yeah, we should post a video.
I will. Yeah,
post a video.
I videoed the whole thing.
Yeah, we'll post clips of it, not the whole thing. We'll post we'll speed it up.
We'll post all the good parts.
Yeah, we'll post it. And so if you're listening to this, go ahead and visit the Coaster Kings on Instagram or Facebook. You'll see our reels there, or even TikTok. We'll maybe put it on TikTok too.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And that was cool. It was definitely inspired by Disney. The India area felt very much in the vein of a Disney park with like the mine train and the rocks. It was very Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, it was very
in fact,
beautiful.
On paper, it was very Asia Animal Kingdom, because it's like you've got the India area, the mine train roller coaster in the giant mountain, and the India themed river rapids ride. And the rapids ride was quite long, but it was also very slow. So as long as it was, the reason it's 10 minutes long is really just because it's a very slow, meandering ride, except for the 2 drops that it has. But it was a really cool ride to experience. Like, it was fun. It was a fun ride to do and to say that we did. I love rapids rides. It's neat getting on an oddball rapids ride by, I don't even know who made this. I don't know who designed it, but it's like a neat credit to have.
I think it may have been Jimma. Didn't we see the Jimma logo when we entered the queue?
Oh, yeah. I think that would be the most likely.
I think it's Jimma who made it. Yeah.
And then for the rest of the park, parts of the park did not feel finished. They have like in
some
the back,
mystery China area to the building.
Yeah, there's a mystery, like the Oasis area, which didn't actually have anything.
Rides, yeah.
And then there's like a central tower icon in the middle of the park that's like 200 and something feet tall. And it looks like it would have been an observation tower, but there was no way to get to the top of it. You just walk around it. I don't know, like the park had a good concept and a great like vision, and parts of it turned out really beautiful and clever, and then parts of it is just like totally unfinished. The Middle East area is also really solid. They have probably the park's only name brand. Oh no, they've got the Intamin too. They have a Zamperla Nebulas ride there. That's like one of the only like Western manufactured rides at that park. And then they had this motion simulator ride where you were on a boat. It was very like a flying theater, but on a boat, experience. A floating theater. That was really clever. And then they had a large dark ride, like a large Spider-Man type dark ride. That type of ride is so popular in China. I've actually like lost count how many Spider-Man style rides that we've ridden in China. And this one was no exception to the greatness and weirdness of these like giant, pretty high budget knockoff Spider-Man Transformer type dark rides. So we really enjoyed that. And then the last ride of the day was in the Greece area of the park. There's another coaster in this area that's a Jinma spinning coaster with a barrel roll in it.
Yeah, I'm so sad it was closed. Yeah.
I wish it had been... that one we may have been able to ride. Again, like nothing is guaranteed, but it was closed. It's like a larger version of the one that we rode at China Dinosaur Park in Changsha. But what we did get to ride was the only one that I'm aware of, the only other example of a Flight of Passage-esque flying theater. This is obviously a knockoff version, but it was actually very well done. And it's the only other one that I'm aware of. And again, just a really cool ride to have under our belt. With the dark rides, all 3 of the dark rides that we did, the boat simulator, the flying simulator, and the Spider-Man style ride, all had these custom films where you were taken to all of the environments that are depicted in the themed areas of Silk Road Paradise.
Yeah, definitely tied the park together. But it was wild. It was like this crazy fantasy version of it all.
Yeah, like these almost like
you go into India and then there's like all these elephants flying through the sky and then they're all in the water spouting up and then you go through like
Greece has like all these floating. It's very like everything put through an Avatar filter.
Yeah, of course. There's like the floating mountains everywhere and then and it connects the whole world except it's all Silk Road stuff, of course, but none of it's been nearly realistic to what any of it really looks like around the world.
It was
all fantasy and inspired.
It was all a great experience, even though it was a bummer not to get on any of the like thrill ride coasters at the park. The rides that we rode, I really enjoyed. It was we spent like 2.5 hours there, and I think it was worth the trouble.
Yeah, it was cool seeing it.
What's funny is on the way to this park, like literally one of the stops on the metro station is the Happy Valley station.
Yeah. Happy
Valley Xi'an is a Happy Valley park that was contracted, and they started construction, but it was never completed. There is a complete Jinma suspended looping coaster with 2 corkscrews in it, and a completed...
Yeah, it's like the Vekoma Whirlwind model, but suspended and Jinma.
And then there's a water park that is complete.
That's actually functional.
It's
Playa Maya, one of the many Happy Valley Playa Mayas, yeah.
So they have the Happy Valley water park that is open and functional, but then the Happy Valley theme park was canceled, I'm guessing related to COVID. But then Silk Road Paradise turned around and opened up like a few stops down from the metro. Yeah. I'd be very curious to see how that all pans out. It's just wild to me that like another major theme park would get built like in a relatively close location to this other major theme park by a giant like conglomerate of theme parks in China that was canceled. So it's just fascinating to see like you're on the metro and the metro comes literally physically so close to the roller coaster.
I mean, the metro is in between the 2 parks, between the water park, the Ferris wheel, and then the actual theme park. Because it was designed to be like on the metro. Yeah, I mean it's.
I don't know. Do you think there's a chance that they'll build it? That they'll finish the project?
Nothing is ever done for good in China.
Impossible.
Especially because they are operating the resort. It's just that the whole theme park never got finished.
It just seems crazy because Xi'an is obviously the kind of place that, not that it matters, not that a park in China has to be profitable to exist. They just build them.
But, I mean, come on, we went to a Silk Road Paradise on a Saturday and there was like 2 people there.
Yeah, but it's like they just get built.
The other park was dead too. I mean, Chinese parks and in these outskirts, they're not that well attended usually. I don't know. Maybe they don't see a reason to build it anymore.
Well, I just hope, I mean, that's not... Don't let a silly thing like attendance stop you.
But what I'm saying is that it's not like Xi'an, as the big of the city as it is. It's like it's like people will come. It's like they won't.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely no need for this Happy Valley Park.
These parks don't.
There was no need for Silk Road Paradise, but I hope that doesn't stop them. I hope that they build this Happy Valley Park eventually.
But who says never? Because Shanghai and Beijing Happy Valleys, they got attendance.
Yeah.
We saw the one that Chengdu gets attendance. Chengdu's like in the middle of the city though.
Is an OG.
They get attendance. The Chongqing one was busy when we went, so like that's all possible when the school kids are out. When the school kids are on their annual school trips, they'll get some people to visit. But yeah, I don't know if it's ever gonna happen. I guess we'll see. We'll keep track of it. As of right now, it's very, very far from happening.
Yeah,
very far from happening.
And it wouldn't be the first time that Happy Valley like canceled a project or suspended a project and then just like never went back to it. There's a park I believe there's a Ningbo project of theirs. Not the Six Flags park, but another, like a Happy Valley park in the Zhejiang province that they started construction on.
I will say,
they went as far as like the Ferris wheel and then they canceled it.
I will say though, so the OCT East, right, is currently closed.
Really?
Night Valley,
Night
but
Valley?
that's because they're supposed to be redoing the whole project. And there's no guarantee that the Wood Coast and Night Valley will be open, unfortunately. After this, but there is a rumor that they're completely redoing the entire OCT project. So who knows? Maybe they will pick it up again.
They've been going crazy on that Shenzhen park too. The Happy Valley
Shenzhen park completely redone, which most of their stuff's
they knocked that whole place down basically and started over.
And then the new one in Nanjing we just went to, that is like a whole different style of Happy Valley Park. So everything is possible.
And it was really nice.
Everything is possible.
Yeah.
Shifting gears.
Nothing shall be impossible in the realm of Chinese theme parks that are subsidized by the government.
And then, talking about shifting gears, our next episode is going to be about some of the Tokyo parks, including Tokyo Disney, which we spent some time at. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to the Ningbo Phantom Wild Parks that were on our schedule because a big old typhoon, the biggest one in 50 or 40 years, whatever, blew through Shanghai right after we landed. We were one of the last planes in, and we were quarantined in our hotel room with a bottle of Prosecco, whatever it was.
We were just, I was just glad that, like, So,
we ended up not being able to make it to Ningbo to ride the Vekoma Top Gun, so now it's on our schedule for next year.
The Shanghai, not the Shanghai, the Xi'an as part of the trip, and
that was the most important
Tokyo part of the trip were unaffected by this typhoon.
And I will say, due to some personal news, that whole part of the trip was it was not a good time.
There was just a lot
going on.
There was just a lot going on.
Personally,
it was
and weather-wise, and it was just the Shanghai portion.
We did go to Shanghai Disneyland still the day after the typhoon, which was really weird. Like, the park was definitely...
It opened way late, like at
noon.
With how there was damage.
To handle...
Lots of close rides.
The typhoon. It was...
Yeah, we're not going to mention much more of the Shanghai part, this trip, because we've talked about Shanghai so many times, and we're going to go there so much more often.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention, unless you have anything to add about these parks...
by all means.
That we do want you to check out our last... 2-ish/1 episode, that is the 100th anniversary episode, where all four of us, Ian, Sven, Alex, and I are all together talking about our favorite parks, the history of Costa Kings, favorite rides, all that kind of good stuff. So make sure you check those out. We've got a couple more episodes in this season coming out. It's going to be special between Sven and Ian. We've got, of course, the Japan episode we're going to talk about. We've got a couple of episodes about our layover adventures, because believe it or not, we do a lot of theme parks in our layovers for work.
Cabin Crew Coaster Kings lives on.
I just did Hong Kong Ocean Park. Alex just did Thorpe Park. We're doing Madrid. By the time you listen to this, we have already been to Madrid. Hopefully everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
Lots going on. So we'll be having a couple of episodes.
Doing Estewang on a layover.
About that. Hopefully Danse Macabre was open. And then we will also be doing an in-depth look at 2025 coasters and the T reports from the 2023 operational year for the theme parks. And then we're going to take a break. And then, of course, Season 6. So there's lots more coming up for this season, so make sure you are following us. Make sure you have notifications set up on Spotify. Give us a 5-star review, please. And, I'm kind of rambling, and that's kind of my indication to stop.
Yeah.
This is the Xi'an episode. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.